England and eastern Scotland. But once again, that cloud burning away quite nicely, and then lots of sunshine by the afternoon. And once again, it will feel fairly warm in that sunshine, but not quite as warm as it has done of late. But plenty of fine weather in the outlook, even into next week. Lots of sunshine, temperatures a little bit lower than of late.
There will be a light breeze in the morning, leading to a warm front. Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
It's the final week to see how you could spruce up your spring, as we have an incredible £17,777 in tax-free cash to be won. And if that wasn't enough, we'll also give you the latest Mulberry handbag, and not one, but two sought-after designer watches. Make sure you don't miss out, as lines close on the 4th of April. For another chance to win the lot, text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus one standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2. Call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB12 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrants must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 4th of April. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
The royal family is an enduring symbol of tradition, unity and pride for Britain. At GB News, we celebrate what makes this country great. In our new royal newsletter series, you can join me, Cameron Walker, for Inside the Palace, an exclusive look every week that takes you beyond the gates and brings you the very latest from those at the heart of the monarchy. Never miss a royal moment again. Sign up now. Go to gbnews.com/royal newsletter and get the latest straight to your inbox.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
Exciting news. Every Friday, my Patrick Christie's Tonight Show is going to have a twist to it. We're welcoming some special guests. You. That's right, on Fridays I'm going to be doing my show in front of a live studio audience, because this show is about you and what you have to say. It's going to be the same big debates, same big topics, same big opinions. But every Friday night at 9 p.m, you are invited to come on down to Patrick Christie's Tonight to be a part of the action. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
This Sunday on GB News Breakfast, we've got a special treat for you.
It's me, Angela Rippon.
For just one morning, the broadcast and Strictly Star joins the breakfast team to bring you all the news as it happens.
Nice positive story then.
Another special day here on GB News.
Well, we're still here after the last one.
GB News Breakfast with me, Stephen Dixon, and Angela Rippon, this Sunday from 6.
Yes, we'll be around for a while.
Good evening, you're watching State of the Nation tonight on GB News with me, Matt Goodwin. On tonight's show, Donald Trump has shattered the international liberal consensus, but tonight we will be revealing the backstory as to why Team Trump are so concerned about the state of free speech right here in the UK. But has Brexit Britain been saved from the worst of Trump's tariffs regime? Does this trade war actually vindicate the 2016 referendum result? We'll be debating that shortly with top guests. And get this, a convicted Syrian terrorist has avoided deportation from the UK after the police backed his claim for asylum, yet again making a complete mockery of our asylum and immigration system. Plus, as Marine Le Pen is barred from running to be president of France and Germany prepares new laws to do the same thing, I will be speaking tonight to Brendan O'Neill about the death of free speech across Europe. That State of the Nation with me, Matt Goodwin, starts right now. Now, I'll also be joined tonight by my top panel, assistant comment editor at The Telegraph, Poppy Coburn, and political commentator Andy Twelves. As ever, let me know your views at gbnews.com/your say, and of course you can reach out on X at GoodwinMJ or at GBNews. But now it's time for the News Bulletin with Sophia Wensler.
Matt, thank you. It's just gone 8 o'clock. Your top story this hour. The US stock market has dropped sharply in the early trading hours after Donald Trump announced a raft of tariffs last night. The UK has drawn up a 400-page list of US products it could hit with tariffs after the US president announced a 10% tariff on UK imports. The government has said any retaliatory tariffs would be a last resort. Meanwhile, a 25% tariff has also come into effect today in the UK on all foreign cars imported to the US, a move which experts fear could cost 25,000 jobs in the British car industry. The Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney has just responded, saying his country will match the US auto tariffs with 25% levies on all vehicles imported from the US. And after President Trump imposed a 20% tariff on the EU, French President Macron said the EU will respond in an organised and unified manner, and it will be more massive than before. Elsewhere, the Prime Minister told business chiefs in Downing Street that clearly there will be an economic impact, but the government would respond with cool and calm heads. Meanwhile, Reform UK leader Nigel Farage said Brexit is to thank for lower UK tariffs during an interview with GB News political editor Christopher Hope.
Well, he said he'd put tariffs on. He was elected to do that. And, of course, he's put us in the lower tier, the lowest tier. Interestingly, EU 20%, UK 10%. By the way, I'm not pretending 10% is good. No. It's just less bad than it would have been without Brexit.
It's all down to you then, because you took
the EU. It's something that most of the commentariat can't really see.
Do we owe you a thank you then, Nigel Farage?
I repeat the offer. If the government wants me to help, I would help, and I would do it. Even though they're a Labour government, I do it in the national interest.
In other news, Birmingham's bin strike must be brought to a close. That's according to a minister, following a visit to the city where mountains of rubbish are piled up on the streets, attracting rats. 17,000 tonnes of uncollected waste line the streets in the West Midlands as a bankrupt Birmingham City Council and bin workers are battling it out over pay. Local government minister Jim McMahon met council chiefs today in an effort to end the strike that has seen refuse workers stage a complete walkout for almost a month. And King Charles has marked the 80th anniversary of Mission Aviation Fellowship at RAF Northolt today, unveiling a new aircraft that will deliver aid to remote regions in Papua New Guinea. The King also celebrated Papua New Guinea's 50th anniversary of independence during the visit. It comes after the monarch was recently admitted for a short hospital stay due to side effects from his cancer treatment. Those are the latest GB News headlines. Now it's back to Matt.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to news alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Welcome back to State of the Nation tonight with me, Matt Goodwin. Now, this was the moment that the Donald Trump administration signalled to the Western world that enough was enough. Check this out.
And what I worry about is the threat from within, the retreat of Europe from some of its most fundamental values, values shared with the United States of America. In Britain and across Europe, free speech, I fear, is in retreat.
It became very clear at that moment that the new administration in America was very concerned about the UK's threat from within too.
There have been infringements on free speech that actually affect not just the British. Of course, what the British do in their own country is up to them.
But we've had free speech for a very, very long time in the United Kingdom.
Well, here's a reminder of what happened last night in that same Team Trump. Check this out.
My fellow Americans, this is Liberation Day, waiting for a long time. You know, you think of the European Union, very friendly. They rip us off. It's so sad to see. It's so pathetic. 39%, we're going to charge them 20%, so we're charging them essentially half of America. United Kingdom, 10%, and we'll go 10%. So we'll do the same thing.
The good news is the UK can save itself from the projected 1% these tariffs could wipe off our national economy. We must heed the words of JD Vance. At the very heart of this lies freedom of speech issues and threats to free speech. It's been rumoured that the Donald Trump administration is deeply concerned by a number of cases here in the UK in which freedom of speech has been under threat, leading some within Trump's camp to say no free trade without free speech. While we are currently expecting a verdict from the case of Lavia Tasici-Bolt, the pro-life campaigner who held a sign saying, "Here to talk if you want," outside an abortion clinic in 2023. Clearly, the Trump administration believes the idea of criminalising protests near abortion clinics is an affront to the ancient principle of free speech. And there are many, many other cases like this one too. But we also saw a huge crackdown on social media posts during the Southport protests and riots last year. Of course, we saw Telegraph columnist Alison Pearson receive a visit from the police following a Twitter post in the aftermath of Southport, and it was originally documented as a non-crime hate incident. Indeed, we've seen over 200,000 of these non-crime hate incidents being meted out in recent years. There's also the case, of course, of Darren Brady, the Army veteran who was arrested by police for causing anxiety by a post that he put on social media of a swastika digitally manipulated to be made up of 4 LGBT pride flags. You may think it's tasteless, you may think it's inappropriate, but it was, of course, a joke. So Keir Starmer told Donald Trump and JD Vance that we have freedom of speech in the UK. But do we? With an estimated 13,200 non-crime hate incidents compiled just over the last year, do we have free speech? With people being arrested and in some cases convicted for social media posts, do we really have free speech? When 6 police officers are turning up at the home of parents who have complained about their local school in a WhatsApp group, do we have free speech? With people being convicted for protesting near abortion zones, do we have free speech? And when the Labour government is about to bring in a new definition of Islamophobia, which is clearly, I would argue, designed to limit public debate over the issue of Islam within Western societies, again, do we have free speech? It's time our leaders woke up to the fact that this country, the country where freedom of speech was invented, the country where individual liberty was entrenched, has turned its back on its most sacred of values. And if we want to restore the special relationship with the world's foremost superpower, then I think we must do the right thing and restore free speech and free expression. As ever, let me know your views at gbnews.com/yoursay or tweet me at GoodwinMJ or, of course, at GBNews. With me now to discuss all of this, live from America, is Editor-in-Chief of the National Pulse, friend of the show, Raheem Kassam. Raheem, thanks for joining us this evening here in the UK. Let's just talk a little bit about the remarkable events in the US, the arrival of Trump's tariffs. You're closer than pretty much anybody I know to the Trump camp. Just talk us through here, what's the political logic, the underlying philosophy that's driving this new decision to impose tariffs on America's competitors?
Yeah, thanks, Matt, and thanks for having me. Look, I think, to get this part out of the way, President Trump ran on implementing a tariff scheme that would actually bring America's balance of payments into line more with the tariffs that are placed on American goods being exported all around the world. So that's the basis. That's the very basic element of why this is happening. And actually, a lot of people, a lot of the more hardcore people on tariffs, the Dr. Peter Navarros of the world, one of President Trump's advisors on this stuff, would probably have gone much further than President Trump went yesterday when he announced, sort of 50% of what they put on American stuff, they'll get back now placed on them. A lot of people understand this to be a negotiating tactic, but it's not just a negotiating tactic to kind of rebalance the trade argument that is, roaring in the United States at the moment. And this brings into account, income tax arguments. President Trump is known to be fond of an idea of the external revenue service, where actually tariffs and fees on goods coming into the country could replace things like income tax, and that is becoming more and more of an argument over here too. But also it touches on what you were saying just a moment ago, right? Is are America's trading partners America's philosophical partners? and you take any number of examples from all around the Western world, not just in the United Kingdom, but especially with a lot of cases in the United Kingdom, is that the two countries do not operate on a level playing field philosophically at the moment. Now, I was in the room, by the way, in Munich when JD Vance gave that speech, and I was in the White House just 2 days ago when Lord Mandelson was in there trying to represent the United Kingdom in opposition to these tariffs. The problem is we have had now for decades and decades a situation where technology and government overreach is leading to them trying as much as possible to basically control not just what people say, but what they think. I was talking to people last night here on Capitol Hill about how somebody's praying silently outside an abortion clinic. The police have been known to say, "Okay, well, tell us what you're praying about." And they can't actually believe that there is that level of thought policing going on again, not just in Britain, but across Europe.
Raheem, I'm laughing, but I really should not be laughing at all. Just talk to us, if you could, briefly about the special relationship. Lots of folks will be watching the tariffs here in the UK. They'll be nervous about the economic impact this is going to have, particularly in parts of northern England, on the automobile industry and so on. I mean, but just talk to us, if you can, about where you think this leaves a special relationship. We've got people here in Westminster saying, well, this is evidence of actually the Brexit dividend, that you've got the UK on 10%, EU on 20%. You've got these lingering concerns over free speech in the UK, which clearly JD Vance and Donald Trump are aware of. What's your assessment of how this plays into that special relationship tonight?
Yeah, I've heard both of these arguments over the course of the last week. On the one hand, especially after yesterday, on the one hand, the Brexit dividend, Britain doesn't have to get the 20% tariffs like the rest of the EU is getting. That's a great thing. That should be celebrated. On the other hand, people are saying, okay, well, but we don't have the collective bargaining power that the EU has now. And it's like, well, hold on a minute. But we also don't have that additional 10% tariff going on. The reality is this. I talk to these people day in and day out. They want to do a deal with the United Kingdom. They want to do a trade deal with the United Kingdom. Those two countries, the US and the UK, have a trading relationship and rely on each other for so many goods and services that cross the Atlantic, that there is a lot of goodwill. But it has to be balanced, and it has to be fair to both sides. And while the UK government has been crowing for years and years about, oh, well, we export so much to the US and so on and so forth, they didn't realize that the Trump administration came in and go, oh, okay, so you're admitting there is an imbalance here, especially if you look at the per capita numbers, and that has to be leveled out. Well, I think they need a better negotiating team than Keir Starmer and Peter Mandelson. I'm sorry to say they didn't really get much done over the last week, going in there, taking meetings, trying to get their point across. And again, it comes back down to this. Not just are we good trading partners, are we good philosophical partners?
And just lastly, briefly, if I may, Raheem, are we seeing the death of liberal globalization this week? Is this essentially what's happening? The reimposition of tariffs, biggest tariffs, is for certainly 60, 70 years, if not longer. I mean, are we actually seeing the death of something bigger here, which is the economic model that's governed the globe for much of the last 75, 80 years?
You're certainly seeing a correction, a massive correction. And I think, most people kind of understand, rightly so. It's gone too far, just like the hate speech laws, all of this stuff. It's all gone too far to centralize control and an imbalance of the relationships here. But I wouldn't say it's seeing a destruction. If anything, it's not the death of something. It's the birth of something new. It's actually America coming to the table and going, right, we want everybody to be partners here, but we have to be partners on a level playing field. It cannot be a one-way street anymore. America can't afford for it to be a one-way street anymore. Go to these cities, go to Baltimore, go to Philadelphia, go to Los Angeles. I mean, some of these places are so terribly neglected, and it's as a result of America having picked up the bill all around the world for so many things. And I totally get it, going around this country and talking to ordinary people. They can't understand why there has been that imbalance for so long, much like people in, the north of England can't understand why we'd sent so much money to Brussels for so very long. The same spirit is running through both electorates.
Well, thank you, Raheem Kassam, for joining us tonight live from America. With me now is my top panel, assistant comment editor at The Telegraph, Poppy Coburn, and political commentator Andy Twelves. Andy, your take, are we seeing the death of liberal globalization? Are we seeing, as Raheem says, this big correction in the global economic system?
I don't really think so. I think it's absolutely ridiculous. The UK are getting the same tariff as the Taliban in Afghanistan. I mean, I think Raheem mentioned philosophical partners. Are we then on level footing with the Taliban as being philosophical partners with the US? I mean, the logic doesn't make sense. I mean, Trump's even slapped a tariff on 2 uninhabited islands. I mean, the formula's been questioned pretty publicly by senior math academics. I don't think he really knows what he's doing with this. I don't think it's the death of anything or the birth of anything. It's just confusing.
Poppy Coburn?
I mean, to be honest with you, I think people always forget about the UK-US relationship. There's one way that you can sum it up. He's just not that into you. This is not about the UK. This is about what's happening in the US, and this is what Trump cares about. And what Trump cares about is rebalancing global trade. He said this all the way back in the 1980s. It's a real bugbear of him from the very beginning. And when he's giving that speech last night and talking about Liberation Day, look at the people in the audience. They're trade union members. Okay, these are the voters from the American heartland who made him president twice. And so when we say, why are we getting these tariffs? We're a free trade country. Again, it's not about us. He's trying to create, as you say, a completely new world order that is based on a new system of trade. It's got nothing to do with us personally, in the same way it has nothing to do with, Singapore personally. That's another free trade country. Well, guess what? They've got 10% tariffs too. It's not about us.
Well, what he's essentially trying to do, I think, is make up for the distributional effects of globalisation on the working class in Western states over the last 20 years, many of whom, to be blunt, in the Midwest and elsewhere, got smashed by globalisation. And I'm kind of struggling with Labour politicians today saying, well, they don't understand how Trump is imposing these tariffs, when actually what he's doing is he's trying to say to companies and corporates, look, if you want to go and sell all your goods in China and completely screw over the working class in the West, there are going to be consequences to that.
Labour politicians sound like Milton Friedman. I mean, why are they talking now about how great global free trade is? You're supposed to be on the political left. Politicians have told these left-behind workers for how long? I'm sorry, it's out of our hands. There's nothing we can do. Globalisation is a force in the same way wind is a force. Well, it's not. It's a policy choice, and Trump's just proven that.
Yeah, Andy, I mean, Poppy's got a point, hasn't she? I mean, Tony Blair was once saying, if you don't understand the wonders of globalisation, you're basically closed-minded. That was his famous speech in 2005. Of course, globalisation, we were told by the expert class, would lift all boats, except the boats in solidly red wall communities where workers got smashed, communities got hollowed out, and many working class men got pushed into alcoholism and drug addiction, not just appearing on Netflix dramas that are fashionable among the elite class, but actually their lives were completely decimated by the economic model that governed the last 30 years.
No, I completely agree. I think globalisation has been devastating for the working class of this country, the working class of America and the working class across the UK. And, it's not really a right-wing or a left-wing thing about globalisation. You have people who oppose it on both sides. A lot of the kind of working class left, if you look at your Dennis Skinners, you look at even your Jeremy Corbyns, would even go, come on, guys, let's take a break here. But, I mean, the justification, I think the lead story here was about the free speech, and that's why he might be doing it. I mean, Poppy disputed that. She says it's not about us. But I think it's ridiculous for J.D. Vance to be talking about free speech when they've expelled the Associated Press from the press pool in the White House. A newswire, an objective newswire, for being
you're not seriously suggesting we don't have a problem with free speech in this country.
I think it's hypocritical of them to be talking about free speech when they're throwing out newswire journalists and abducting students in the streets.
But they are clearly watching very closely, Poppy Coburn, what is happening in the UK with free speech. They are clearly watching the cases around the abortion protester. They're watching the non-crime hate incidents. They're watching the reaction to Southport. We know they're watching individuals like Tommy Robinson and others. They clearly are concerned about the direction of travel. As Trump said, no free trade without free speech.
I think we actually represent more to them a kind of useful foil to what their political project is all about. I mean, I can kind of understand the argument people make, well, you're hypocritical, but that's kind of not what it's about. They use free speech because in America there has been such a massive clampdown on free speech from the left for so long, and it's kind of a bit of a rebalancing effort, and I think that's how they view it. In terms of how it relates to the UK, I mean, we don't have free speech in the UK. We literally don't. It's in our law. We do arrest people for speech, so we don't have free speech. But I think the point that J.D. Vance was trying to make at that Munich conference was we are not the same. Our values diverged quite a long time ago, certainly at least when Donald Trump was made president for the second time. And because of that, don't expect us to treat you like you are our allies. You're not necessarily our ideological allies. We're going through a whole transformation in our country, and you need to wake up to that fact. And I think that's what it really was.
Well, indeed, it is a global reset, as Raheem Kassam just told us. Thank you to my panel for now. After the break, we're going to be looking at how the 2016 Brexit referendum has arguably saved the UK from Donald Trump's tariffs on the European Union. Is this the big Brexit dividend? We're going to be talking about that in just a couple of minutes. I'll see you shortly.
If you want your news to be straight talking,
this is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
down to earth,
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
and most importantly, honest,
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get the book thrown at them.
then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Martin Daubney, weekdays from 3 p.m.
It's all kicking off in the world of bowling because an historic bowls club could be forced to close after a staggering 2,000% parking fee hike. Members, many of them of course elderly, say they can't afford the jump from 40 quid to an astonishing £840. Now for some, the club is their social lifeline, but the council insists that the change is necessary to ease financial pressures. Well, of course they would. Well, joining me now to discuss this is the club captain of Eastbourne Parade Bowls Club, Pete Hensman. Pete, welcome to the show. This is an astonishing hike in the car parking costs. It must have simply bowled you all over.
Yeah, to use a phrase, you're quite right. We sort of staggered and worried because of the possibility of closing us.
What's the reaction been within the club to what seems like an eye-watering increase?
Well, as you said, several of our members are saying, we just can't join, we can't afford it. The bus service around here is not particularly good, and they can't carry their bowls or get to the club.
And you've been around since 1897. You've got 70 members, got some wonderful pictures there on screens of people just getting together. Absolutely wonderful thing to do. Healthy physically, healthy mentally, and of course a lot of people lose more friends as they get on. Have the council been remotely forthcoming in seeing the light?
I think they've got a bit of a panic on. We got a message inviting us to join the chairman of the council tomorrow to discuss the matter. I hope we're going to get a compromise.
GB News.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Headliners on GB News 11 p.m. every night. It's got 3 top comedians going through the next day's newspapers so you don't have to read them, which is great.
That's a good point. He's lying. I mean, maybe he's not lying.
That's Headliners every night from 11 p.m. and 5 a.m. as well on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to State of the Nation tonight with me, Matt Goodwin, right here on GB News. Now, you have been sending in your views about the Trump tariffs that we were just discussing. One viewer says, how does this work? America wants free speech, but go to America and they check what you said about Donald Trump on social media and turn you around if it was negative. Another viewer says, Matt, of course you're 100% right, but try telling Keir Starmer that it's in one ear and out the other with nothing in between. Ooh. Roy says, Trump will do well for the UK. Free speech and fairness will flourish. Keep your views coming in at gbnews.com/yoursay, or of course, hit me up on X. Now, continuing on the theme of Donald Trump's new tariff regime, here's a reminder of what happened on that historic day yesterday.
Of America, United Kingdom 10%, and we'll go 10%. So we'll do the same thing.
But it's even worse news for the European Union. Check this out.
European Union, they're very tough, very, very tough traders. You know, you think of European Union, very friendly. They rip us off. It's so sad to see. It's so pathetic. 39%, we're going to charge them 20%, so we're charging them essentially half.
I wonder how that went down in Brussels. Well, so while this country isn't completely out of the woods, the fact that the European Union's tariff is significantly higher than our own appears to vindicate the Brexit referendum result in 2016, does it not? Well, with me now to discuss this is Catherine McBride, Fellow at the Centre for Brexit Policy, who was busy last night on GB News, bringing you live coverage as Donald Trump unveiled his tariffs. Of course, Patrick Christis had that excellent show last night doing all of that. Catherine, is this really a Brexit dividend? There are people out there on social media today saying this is one of the big upsides of Brexit, that we've got lower tariffs than the EU. Is that true?
It is for now, but we've got to hold on to them. These tariffs won't last forever. We do want to do a trade deal with the US if we can, but this is something I produced on Patrick's show last night. This is the chapter on the European Union's trade barriers.
So this is from...
This is from the USTR.
Team Trump,
the trade,
White House.
Yeah, the
it's
Trump
quite a
White
meaty
House.
document.
Yes, well, the only one that got more trade barriers than the EU was China. They've got 50 pages of trade barriers, and these are ours. We've got 5. However, all of this research was done when the Conservatives were in power, and there were processes to move our SPS and our TBT, our technical barriers to trade, and our sanitary and phytosanitary regulations on importing food. We were going to move to a scientific basis. We were going to create our own regulations about that. And that's what the Americans are expecting.
Okay.
I think if we go ahead with the reset that the Labor Party is talking about, we get EU tariffs. I would be very surprised if we don't.
So essentially what you're saying is it's in our interest to lean into the strategic, flexible autonomy that we've had since Brexit, to basically not get aligned with all of this stuff that's going into the EU, the kind of, endless tariffs and regulations, to steer clear of what is probably the most protectionist market on the globe right now, and to actually lean into the fact that we are a more nimble player in the world economic order.
Well, we already have a free trade agreement with the EU, completely tariff-free and quota-free.
Yeah.
And yet we mainly buy from them.
Yeah.
They don't buy from us.
Right.
We are in the Trump position in our relationship with the EU. But the US buys from us. They're a big customer of ours. Our trade is now at balance with the US because of the amount of fuel we have to buy. So we're importing more liquid natural gas. We're importing wood chips, which we put into the biomass burners. And we're also importing ethanol, which we're putting into petrol to make E10 and E5 petrol. So that's all coming from the US. So now we import as much as we export. But for our big, valuable cars and our plane engines and plane parts, pharmaceuticals, in fact, 80% of what we sell the EU is in, the US is in 5 categories. And we can't afford to lose them as a market.
So here's a question no one's ever really been able to answer me. So we've got, on the one hand, this enormous opportunity to carve out a sort of preferable relationship with the US relative to the EU.
Yes.
And we could do that even with a Labour government with Donald Trump in the White House. Yet at the same time, much of our political class here in Westminster seems adamant that it wants to actually pivot more towards the European Union, get closer with the economic relationship, get closer with the security relationship, potentially get closer with the single market, the customs union. Who knows where all of this is going? Do they not see the strategic upside in actually distancing ourselves from the EU and embracing this new economic era?
Unfortunately, I think you're right. I don't think they do see it. And a lot of that is to do with the way the media is portraying this. The number of people that are saying, oh, this will ruin world trade, when this is not Trump's first roundabout. Trump was in power 8 years ago, and he introduced tariffs then, and nothing happened. There's this world doom, massive inflation didn't happen.
Although devil's advocate would say the markets are taking quite a strong tumble today.
Well, they are, but most of them shouldn't be. I mean, they've been very high, but the biggest companies in the US are now service industries who are really not affected by tariffs. Amazon will be affected by tariffs because they import a lot of goods from Asia that they sell at a pretty close to retail price. But most of the others won't be affected by this at all. So I'm not sure. I think there's a few large investors who are on the sort of Democratic side throwing a bit of a tantrum, getting all upset. But when you think about it, only 25% of the UK's of the US's total trade, only total trade in the US is only about 25% of the US's GDP, and imports are only 14%.
Right.
So they really can survive without us. But for countries like Canada and Mexico, where 75% of Canada's exports go to the US, they're not in such a good position.
But this is what we're seeing is this global reset. So I'll ask you the same question I asked Raheem Kassam and others. Are we now witnessing actually the death of neoliberal globalization, the sort of free trade, deregulation, liberalization of finance era that basically governed the world between 1990 and kind of, well, 2 weeks ago, that was essentially about prioritizing the interests of global corporates over nation states, that was really giving us a rigged economic system that helped China at the expense of America. And actually what we're seeing is really not just one president making changes, but the beginning of an entirely new chapter in global economic history.
Well, it will be slightly, but I think that it was never quite as liberal as people thought. I think what will happen is the best way to get around a tariff wall is to put manufacturing in the other country.
Yeah.
And this happened before, and this is going to happen again.
So we'll see lots of reshoring,
So
we'll see lots of companies going back to America.
A global company now will have factories in the US, factories in the EU, factories in the UK, factories in China, and they'll be supplying the market from their factory.
Which is what Trump wants to achieve, right? Which is basically help the working class in America that got smashed by globalisation in China and others. Well, thank you, Catherine McBride. There's some really great commentary. After the break, we're going to be looking at yet another shocking asylum case back here in the UK, where a convicted Syrian terrorist, get this, has been allowed to stay in the country. You're not going to believe this one. I'll see you in a couple of minutes.
Dinner under the stars tonight?
That reminds me of our travel insurance.
You mean all clear skies?
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations forecast.
Well, the UK has plenty of sunshine. There is more wet and windy weather to come across parts of Spain and Portugal over the next couple of days. An area of low pressure bringing wet and windy weather in here. Generally fine across the Canaries. Temperature will be rising here. Plenty of sunshine for Corsica and Sardinia, much of northern Italy. 1 or 2 isolated showers in southern Italy. Quite showery over mainland Greece and through parts of Turkey too. A continued possibility of showers here, but some sunny skies for Santorini and warming up a touch in Barcelona.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations forecast.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently.
It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it?
It's explosive.
I mean, this is very good.
It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial.
And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born.
It's everything you need to kickstart your evening.
Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it.
That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
The royal family is an enduring symbol of tradition, unity and pride for Britain. At GB News, we celebrate what makes this country great. In our new royal newsletter series, you can join me, Cameron Walker, for Inside the Palace, an exclusive look every week that takes you beyond the gates and brings you the very latest from those at the heart of the monarchy. Never miss a royal moment again. Sign up now. Go to gbnews.com/royal newsletter and get the latest straight to your inbox.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more.
Whether it's breaking royal news, please bring us up to date, or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation,
no,
Because the failure is...
You're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Dubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Exciting news. Every Friday, my Patrick Christie's Tonight Show is going to have a twist to it. We're welcoming some special guests. You. That's right, on Fridays I'm going to be doing my show in front of a live studio audience because this show is about you and what you have to say. It's going to be the same big debates, same big topics, same big opinions. But every Friday night at 9 p.m, you are invited to come on down to Patrick Christie's Tonight to be a part of the action. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to State of the Nation Tonight on GB News with me, Matt Goodwin. Now, get this. A convicted Syrian terrorist has been granted permission to stay in the UK. I know. Thanks to the support of police backing his asylum claim. Despite his criminal history, including terror-related convictions, UK authorities have deemed him a low risk to public safety. This latest disastrous decision is, of course, a reminder that leaving the European Convention on Human Rights, the ECHR, and changing our laws will not be enough on their own. The activists within our legal system, our judicial system, are yet another barrier to common sense asylum policy to keeping British people safe and secure. Why aren't the British people ever put first? I ask myself that question most days. So is this really the kind of Britain that we want to see, a country that prioritises the rights of terrorists over the safety of our own citizens? Well, I'm joined now to discuss this by my panel, assistant comment editor at The Telegraph, Poppy Coburn, and political commentator Andy Twells. Poppy, you're at The Telegraph. Most days I read another shocking case relating to somebody being allowed to stay in the country who shouldn't be allowed to stay, who we should deport. In this case, it's a Syrian terrorist allowed to stay in the UK with the support of counter-terrorism officials. One of the things they pointed to is that he now has a tidy house and therefore should be allowed to stay. This is insane. It's outrageous. It's absurd. It's making a mockery of our claim to be a self-governing sovereign nation that keeps our people safe. What's going on?
I mean, I think often with these news stories, what someone who wants to defend the status quo will say is, well, you're just cherry picking. But I think now we've done enough of these stories to show that, like, this is not a one-off. Actually, there are many, many incidents where it seems like the more severe your crime or the more the danger that you portray to British citizens, the more likely you are allowed to stay. And that is, frankly, because of the legal system we have in this country, where if you can make an argument that if you go home, you will be told off for doing a bad thing, which, you know, in a sane country, you would hope that that would happen. You would hope that terrorists are punished. There was another case of a man who was beating his wife and ended up killing her. Yeah. Yes, you would hope that he'd be punished in his home country. That's the entire point. The worse crime you commit, the more likely you are to be able to stay because of our human rights regime. So I think, you know, we can't just say this is a one-off. No, this is the way the system was designed. The outcomes we get are the ones that we have advocated for in this country, and that's the truth.
Andy, the truth is we have to basically completely redefine the legal architecture that surrounds our country, is it not? We need to repeal the Human Rights Act. We need to leave the ECHR. We probably need to review things like the Refugee Convention, because this is insane. We're allowing terrorists to stay in the country.
Well, this isn't based on that. This is based on conflicting guidance from the Home Office and counter-terrorism. To be perfectly clear, this isn't, you know, anything like that. But, you know, leaving the ECHR is, you know, a lot easier of a soundbite than it is done. You know, the ECHR is key to a lot of the things that keep our society sane.
Well, these are the same arguments that were used around EU membership. Well, no, we managed to leave the EU in
the Good Friday Agreement. Okay. That's my point.
Okay, then we come up with a great repeal bill that keeps the clauses for the Good Friday Agreement but leaves all the Article 8 and Article 3 stuff.
You can't do that. The Good Friday Agreement would collapse if we leave the ECHR. It doesn't matter what we put in. You know, it's a good soundbite. Go, yeah, let's, you know, get rid of the foreign courts, blah blah blah. But realistically, if we did, plenty of things that hold our society up would just immediately collapse. And it's not fair.
My view is we prioritise the British people, the security and safety of the British people above all else.
Well, the ECHR just protects a lot about the security and stability of the British people.
So we replace the ECHR with a UK human rights bill?
I mean, I would also say that, like, the idea that, I mean, you're completely right, the Good Friday Agreement does keep Britain propped up. But I would say that keeping the ECHR is going to also destroy British society. And I'm not alone in saying this. This is not even a right-wing opinion. This is what Morgan McSweeney thinks. You know, and he's the ear into Keir Starmer, and he's been saying from a pragmatic pragmatic left-wing perspective, we cannot continue to have cases like this. We cannot continue to have no control over who we have in this country because it's a national security issue. So I agree, it's not as simple as just saying, let's just go. But we might need to be working towards getting to that position because there is no alternative. This cannot carry on. It's too dangerous.
It is too dangerous, isn't it? Lots of people out there, heads in hand, saying also, why am I paying for these people? And it's not just a Syrian terrorist. I think a couple of days ago it was a Jamaican rapist. A couple of days before that it was the Albanian cannabis factory creator. We do these stories all the time on this show, and I will always highlight these stories because they're absolutely obscene and they undermine the rights of taxpayers who have to pay the cost of these cases. And nobody in SW1 Westminster wants to draw attention to it.
I agree, and it's not sustainable at all. And I'm not suggesting it is. I'm just saying, I think, as Poppy did say, you can't just go, let's just do this without actually thinking about it. And it's not for, a trade unionist, a journalist and an academic to kind of figure out the way to fix, the ECHR problem. That's for serious legal academics to think it through properly, because it is core, just by the nature. We can have a go at Tony Blair and Gordon Brown and the coalition government and Theresa May and everyone for enshrining the ECHR so deeply into the fabric of our legal system, but fundamentally it is in the fabric of our legal system.
It's also going to have to be something politicians do at the end of the day, because I do think it's quite easy to point the finger at judges, because some of them are, maybe I don't share their politics, I'll put it that way. But ultimately, at the end of the day, it's Parliament's decision. Parliament are the people who are responsible for whether or not we stay in the ECHR. Now, the people have been pretty clear. They don't like this. They don't want a scenario where people who are a threat to us and our children are allowed to stay here. So what we need to say to our politicians is, yeah, it's going to be difficult. Yes, it's going to take a lot of time. Yes, you're going to have to speak to lots of academics. Get on with it. That's your job.
Now, Kemi Badenoch is clearly being pushed in towards a direction of campaigning to leave. Now, she's sort of held back from doing that. Labour are obviously beginning to make noises about trying to reform Article 3 and Article 8 of the ECHR, which are the key parts, and they're going to work with other European neighbours. The only party that is unequivocally saying leave the ECHR is the Reform Party. So is Kemi going to get bounced into campaigning to leave altogether?
Look, I'll be honest with you, Matt. I think people are sick and tired of people saying it's more complicated than that.
Yeah, me too.
OK? Actually, it's not complicated. This is wrong. It is your job to get through the legal complexities and figure out a solution. And it shouldn't have to take a populist party from the outside to say this. This should actually be common sense. And I think it's a real condemnation of what the mainstream parties in our country have become, where they actually just pass the buck onto another group of people and say, oh, hands up, it's not my fault, it's not my responsibility. If you're in charge, if you want power, then you must take responsibility. That's my view.
Yeah, we get this all the time, don't we, Andy? It's too complicated, you can't do this. But actually, it turns out with Brexit, with Trump, so on, we can actually bring about radical political change. How many economists out there are saying you can't put tariffs down? Well, you can't leave the EU. The economy will implode. We'll have World War III. Do you remember that one? We'll have World War III. Turns out, actually...
have you seen the markets this morning? Have you seen M&A in the US for the last 90 days? I mean, short-term reaction, that's only because we've had the short-term reaction. We don't know the long-term reaction.
Well, I'm still waiting for that. I'm still waiting for that Brexit apocalypse, but there we go. Thank you to my panel. After the break, we're going to be looking at the death of freedom of speech on the continent in Europe. In a moment, we're going to be talking about that shocking news that Marine Le Pen has been banned from standing for the presidency in 2027, alongside shocking new suggestions in Germany that they're going to try and do the same to candidates from the Alternative for Germany. I'm going to be talking to top commentator Brendan O'Neill about these issues in just a couple of minutes. You don't want to miss this.
Hi there and welcome to your latest Met Office forecast for GB News. There's going to be plenty more fine weather on offer over the next 24 hours, lots of warm sunshine on Friday, but there will be a little bit of patchy rain in some western areas overnight Thursday and into Friday, and that's courtesy of these weather fronts moving in from the south, so something a little bit more unsettled perhaps for a time. But as we go into Thursday evening, that rain starts to clear away from southwestern England and Wales, moves into Northern Ireland, but I think we'll only see just some patchy light rain by the end of the night. Most places staying dry with clear spells and turning pretty cold across Scotland and the north of England. A frost in places, but much milder in the south compared to of late, and temperatures in double figures for some of us as we begin the day on Friday. So a bit of a cloudier start for some of us as we begin the day on Friday. Some areas of low cloud moving into northeastern parts of Scotland. So Aberdeenshire, Caithness, a bit cloudy here, but most parts of Scotland, blue skies and sunshine after that chilly start. Temperatures will quickly rise as well. A bit more in the way of cloud across Northern Ireland, Wales and the southwest. Still one or two spots of rain here and there, but most places quickly becoming dry. And then the vast majority of the UK will have a fine and increasingly sunny day on Friday. That sunshine's got some strength to it now, so temperatures quickly rising into the low 20s in some southern parts by the afternoon. Those North Sea coasts, though, still fairly chilly. That brisk northeasterly wind keeping temperatures on the east coast more like 10 or 11 degrees at best. But in the sunshine everywhere, out of that breeze, it will feel pretty warm. As we move into the weekend then, Saturday starts off on a fairly cloudy note for some central and eastern parts of England and eastern Scotland. But once again, that cloud burning away quite nicely and then lots of sunshine by the afternoon. And once again, it will feel fairly warm in that sunshine, but not quite as warm as it has done of late. But plenty of fine weather in the outlook, even into next week. Lots of sunshine, temperatures a little bit lower than of late.
Westminster, the ultimate clique. And you're fighting like rats in a sack. But here on the Camilla Tominey Show, we ask the questions the establishment media is too scared to ask. OK, let me ask you a straight question, because I know you're a straight-talking politician. Whether it's net zero, illegal immigration or law and order, nothing is off-limits. You had the power then.
Yeah, as I
and
say,
now you've lost it. That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show that's fearless. But no, let me finish my question if you don't mind, because it is my show. Sundays at 9:30, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akweer, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to State of the Nation Tonight with me, Matt Goodwin. Now, earlier this week, you won't have missed it, a shock judgment in France banned Marine Le Pen, the front-runner in the polls, the favourite to win the next presidential election in France, from running to be president for 5 years. She was found to have misused EU funding for domestic politics. But many have pointed out this happens all the time on the continent and, of course, in Brussels. But now it turns out that the new German coalition, after those historic elections in Germany, is drawing up plans to ban anybody with any convictions of extremism and violating hate laws from standing for public office. The problem, of course, is who defines extremism today and who defines hate. And will this be used as a weapon against the insurgent alternative for Germany, much like many people would argue it's been used as a weapon against Marine Le Pen? Well, I'm joined now by chief political writer at Spike Online, Brendan O'Neill. Brendan, when you look across Europe today and you look at the Le Pen judgment, you look at what's happening in Germany, you look at what's happening with attempts to block populist anti-establishment parties from joining coalitions in places like Austria and also previously in places like the Netherlands and Sweden. What's your assessment of what is going on in Europe at the moment?
I think it's awful. It's horrendous. This is an all-out attack on democracy, on the principles of democracy, on the right of voters to determine the fate of their own nations using their own free will and their own free choice. I think it's an attempt to curb the populist tide. I mean, that is what's behind the Marine Le Pen decision. It's very clear. This is an attempt to keep her out of the presidential palace. They're very fearful that she would have won the next presidential election. And what's happening in Germany, as you say, with the clampdown on anyone who's got a so-called extremism conviction from standing in elections, that is an attempt to weaken the AfD and to prevent it from being even more insurgent in German politics than it already is. This is a war on populism, a war on democracy, and a war on voters in France and Germany. And I think it's a really bad sign of things to come.
Now, of course, there are people out there who would say, devil's advocate, that actually while Marine Le Pen did break the rules at the national rally, were using money, according to the courts, to basically redirect the funding to support their national political operations, and that was a violation of the funding rules in Brussels. Of course, there are also people, including, I've noticed people like Yanis Varoufakis, a former Greek economy minister, saying, well, they also think from a left-wing perspective that the use of lawfare in this way is going to breed much bigger problems within democracy. What do you say to people who say, well, actually, you know, at the end of the day, these people are breaking the law, they are violating democratic norms? What's your take on that?
You know what? I just don't buy it at all, Matt. I think it's complete poppycock. The EU is a cesspit of corruption. That's one of the reasons I was very happy to vote Brexit a few years back, because the EU is a corrupt, sclerotic, bureaucratic machine that does not have the best interests of Europe's peoples at its heart. Everyone in Europe is at some level corrupt. It's an organization in which things are done behind closed doors with a secret handshake. There's a lot of financial corruption, a lot of political corruption. So I just don't buy that this was a straightforward legal case against a particular woman. I think it was very clearly an act of lawfare that was designed to prevent a democratic situation from arising. But, you know, this has been a long time coming. And I do think that the 8-year deranged war on Brexit was a dry run for a lot of this. And we're now seeing that play out across Europe.
Well, I was going to say, actually, I think it goes back a bit further. I mean, I remember an academic, Colin Crouch, writing a book in the early 2000s called Post-Democracy, in which he argued that basically the realm of democracy would be hollowed out and power, authority, legitimacy would basically be relocated to a tiny, unelected, unaccountable elite within the legal system, within the judges, the courts, within what we often are told is politics, but isn't really politics in a genuine, competitive, vibrant sense. And I think if you look across Europe over the last decade, as you say, the reaction to the Brexit referendum, also the reaction to other referendums in Europe where people were told to vote again until they got the right decision, surely we are now seeing evidence of this post-democracy.
Oh, absolutely. And, you know, we are so often told that populism is a threat to democracy, but the entire opposite is the case. Anti-populism is the real threat to democracy right now. Populism is democracy come to life. Populism is the revenge of democracy, the revenge of ordinary people against the rule of their technocratic betters. That's what populism is. Populism is democracy in its purest form. Anti-populism, this determined effort by the elites of Europe to crush populist parties or to prevent certain votes from going through, that is the real threat to democracy. So I think if we're looking at what's happening in Europe, it's the elites' hysteria about populism that really poses a threat to the liberties that we are supposed to hold dear.
What about this argument that populism fundamentally can also go too far, that it is about passion, it's about emotion, it's about mobilising the masses, it's the politics of faith, as Michael Oakeshott, the philosopher, once said. And actually, however much we might find them frustrating, you also need that technocratic, bureaucratic, managerial, boring elite class to make sure everybody is still upholding the rules and the norms and the conventions of political life, because actually if that goes, then pretty much everything goes.
Yeah, I'm not really into that argument. I'm a populist. I'm a populist at heart. I think populism is a good thing. And you know, what's the problem with marshalling the masses to change society? That's how societies move forward. That's how they have always moved forward in the modern period, at least. I think it's a good thing. And I think technocracy has proved itself a failure. The experts are not as expert as they think, and they've made one mistake after another to our economies, to our societies, and it's time for them to go.
Well, thank you, Brendan O'Neill. Up next, straight up after the show, is Patrick Christis. Patrick, what have you got in your show this evening?
Well, one of Britain's worst ever jihadis is set to be released. Counter-terrorism police, all they could do is release a statement today telling parents to watch adolescents and report their kids to prevent if they notice anything weird going on. Scotland demanded that everybody takes as many asylum seekers as possible. Now they're also demanding that we stop sending them to Glasgow because the place has turned into a dumping ground. 2 glamorous ladies imported, illegally, obviously, an absolute load of cannabis into Britain. They managed to get off scot-free, essentially. How has that happened? And did you know it's now transphobic if you're a biological woman and you don't want to fight a man who's holding a sword? Well, those are the rules of the game these days. And what happened when one man tried to contact a previously uncontacted tribe? Remarkable footage to bring you. All of that and more 9 to 11, but of course, here's your weather.
Expect a warm front, moving from the kitchen right through to the rest of the house. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hi there, and welcome to your latest Met Office forecast for GB News. There's going to be plenty more fine weather on offer over the next 24 hours. Lots of warm sunshine on Friday, but there will be a little bit of patchy rain in some western areas overnight, Thursday and into Friday, and that's courtesy of these weather fronts moving in from the south, so something a little bit more unsettled perhaps for a time. But as we go into Thursday evening, that rain starts to clear away from southwestern England and Wales, moves into Northern Ireland, but I think we'll only see just some patchy light rain by the end of the night. Most places staying dry with clear spells and turning pretty cold across Scotland and the north of England. A frost in places, but much milder in the south compared to of late, and temperatures in double figures for some of us as we begin the day on Friday. So a bit of a cloudier start for some of us as we begin the day on Friday. Some areas of low cloud moving into northeastern parts of Scotland. So Aberdeenshire, Caithness, a bit cloudy here, but most parts of Scotland, blue skies and sunshine after that chilly start. Temperatures will quickly rise as well. A bit more in the way of cloud across Northern Ireland, Wales and the southwest. Still one or two spots of rain here and there, but most places quickly becoming dry. And then the vast majority of the UK will have a fine and increasingly sunny day on Friday. That sunshine's got some strength to it now, so temperatures quickly rising into the low 20s in some southern parts by the afternoon. Those North Sea coasts, though, still fairly chilly. That brisk northeasterly wind keeping temperatures on the east coast more like 10 or 11 degrees at best. But in the sunshine everywhere, out of that breeze, it will feel pretty warm. As we move into the weekend then, Saturday starts off on a fairly cloudy note for some central and eastern parts of England and eastern Scotland, but once again that cloud burning away quite nicely and then lots of sunshine by the afternoon. And once again it will feel fairly warm in that sunshine, but not quite as warm as it has done of late. But plenty of fine weather in the outlook, even into next week. Lots of sunshine, temperatures a little bit lower than of late.
Expect a warm front, moving from the kitchen right through to the rest of the house. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
It's the final week to see how you could spruce up your spring, as we have an incredible £17,777 in tax-free cash to be won. And if that wasn't enough, we'll also give you the latest Mulberry handbag, and not one, but two sought-after designer watches. Make sure you don't miss out, as lines close on the 4th of April. For another chance to win the lot, text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus one standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2. Call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB12 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 4th of April. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Exciting news. Every Friday, my Patrick Christie's Tonight Show is going to have a twist to it. We're welcoming some special guests. You. That's right, on Fridays I'm going to be doing my show in front of a live studio audience, because this show is about you and what you have to say. It's going to be the same big debates, same big topics, same big opinions. But every Friday night at 9 p.m, you are invited to come on down to Patrick Christie's Tonight to be a part of the action. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
The royal family is an enduring symbol of tradition, unity and pride for Britain. At GB News, we celebrate what makes this country great. In our new royal newsletter series, you can join me, Cameron Walker, for Inside the Palace, an exclusive look every week that takes you beyond the gates and brings you the very latest from those at the heart of the monarchy. Never miss a royal moment again. Sign up now. Go to gbnews.com/royal newsletter and get the latest straight to your inbox.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation, isn't it?
No,
because the failure is
you're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Jubes & Co weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
This Sunday on GB News Breakfast, we've got a special treat for you.
It's me, Angela Rippon.
For just one morning, the broadcast and Strictly Star joins the breakfast team to bring you all the news as it happens.
Nice positive story then.
Another special day here on GB News.
Well, we're still here after the last one.
GB News Breakfast with me, Stephen Dixon, and Angela Rippon, this Sunday from 6.
Yes, we'll be around for a while.
It's 9 p.m. I'm Patrick Christie's Tonight. A radical jihadi linked to the 7/7 bombings is set for release because he's done a mental health course. And
Tariffs. It's a beautiful word, isn't it?
is Trump's 10% tariff